All right, so I just want to say thank you very much to NCHEP, the Alliance. I know how hard, we were just talking about this, it is to shift from a planning and face-to-face conference to going remote like this. And kind of similarly, I'm going to talk about what we did as a college program once COVID hit. So I'm Robert Tynes. I'm a research director at Bard Prison Initiative. I'm also a political scientist that teaches in the program, and I'm a site director at one of the sites. So in March of 2020, that's when the pandemic really hit for us. And so our main concern was how to keep classes running during this time. At the time, we were mid-semester, so we were about 8 weeks in. We have about 250 students enrolled in classes at that point, 78 courses going, 60 faculty involved, and this was at 6 different prisons in New York State. So we were I think we were just before midterm, so we also, we were kind of reaching that peak point. COVID hit and we really started to feel it, so we had to decide what we were going to do. We met together collectively as a group, and we started to come up with strategies. 3 of these initial strategies, which I'll discuss here. We wanted to decrease the potential spread of COVID. That was our first thought. We wanted to maintain academic continuity. And we also wanted to maintain the intellectual community. So our initial strategy of decreasing the potential spread of COVID, we halted all in-person contact. So this was before the Department of Corrections asked all volunteer programs not to come in anymore. We decided weeks before that. We kind of assessed the situation from a public health standpoint, which we thought at the time was the best point of view. And we decided that if anything, we were the ones who were most likely to bring COVID into the facilities that we were in. To our knowledge, maybe there was very little to no COVID in the system at that point. So we didn't want to be the ones responsible for that. So we halted in-person contact. But at the same time, we didn't want to shut classes down because we knew, actually our student feedback was that we want you to keep classes going no matter what. So the first thing we did is we pivoted to a paper remote system. And for other college programs out there, I'm sure you know what this means. We did this because this is the way we were going to maintain the academic community continuity from the beginning. So what did that involve? That involved faculty and administrators and BPI staff meeting together and redesigning all our classes. I had a class going as well. So how we were going to keep the same kind of academic livelihood and rigor, but not be able to go in. So this meant that we developed packets of material based on the course that we had already taught. And so we redesigned syllabi, we got more books in, that's what you're seeing here, some of the books. And then we also just had to bring in lots more reading material. And how did we do this? This is the back end of my car. We basically drove boxes and boxes back and forth. I see smiles on some of you. I know that you know what this is like. So we have 6 sites that we work at. So we had 6 site directors driving back and forth. In the beginning, it was weekly, but then it moved to twice a week. That was not only to drop off what you're seeing here, things such as reading packets, but also on top there's a Dell toner cartridge, paper, reams of paper, more pens, more pencils. It was pure logistics. The third thing that we wanted to do was maintain the intellectual community. So BPI and Bard College is really strong on making sure it's a community educational effort, no matter what campus it is, whether it's the Annandale campus, whether it's the Eastern New York Correctional Campus, or whether it's the Kyrgyzstan campus. We think of academics as an intellectual community endeavor. However, the problem was we had all communication cut off. So one of the things that we did was we created a BPI newsletter. And so this is the very first newsletter. It was 5 to 6 pages. And we tried to convey not only information, you'll see this is just the first paragraph of it, where it talks about we're redesigning the classes. But it also went into other discussions of what was going on at the Annandale campus in the Hudson Valley, and any of the other campuses that we had news on. We also put in math puzzles, and we also had profiles from alum, as well as Reverend Barver put in a piece, president of Bard College put in a piece. And again, this was just to increase communication and kind of keep our community going. The other thing that we did is we communicated via these drop-offs with the Writing and Math Fellows and the Bard clerks. So we, part of the Bard College program is we have a kind of a pedagogy training line or track where students can take classes in pedagogy and learn how to tutor. So when it comes time to something like this, they became invaluable. We have writing tutors and math tutors. We call them Writing and Math Fellows. We also have kind of internal student facilitators, which are the Bard clerks, and they help with logistics. So they're the ones who are receiving the books. They're the ones who are collecting assignments. They're passing out assignments. You know, especially in the beginning, a lot of students just want to stay inside their cells. So Bard clerks would make sure the assignments got to the students in their cells, and also just to keep communicating that classes are going, we're doing the same thing, nothing has changed. So those were our three initial strategies. But one thing that we realized quickly is that it was what we were dealing with really was a pedagogical problem, not a technological one. We really wanted to move from the core mission of the college. And three aspects of that are that we really value collaborative learning. We have a cohort model, which means that when we do admissions, 16 to 20 students per cohort. We have 6 different campuses, so 6 different cohorts. They basically go through the first year together in the same classes, as well as into the second year. They have a couple classes that they take together as well. So we want to maintain that solidarity in the cohort. We also want to, in any way that we could, keep going with our seminar style teaching discussion sections. So we did that. We were able to do that with a paper remote. One thing that we also set up is we did not have direct classes, but we did have discussion sections that students led, so they could take the work from their particular class and meet in the classroom space as if the class was running, but they would run it. They would ask questions of each other, they would brainstorm, they would ask questions that then they would send back to the professors. But then the Department of Corrections introduced the idea that we could also start to use technology. Many of you know there are teleconferencing options, video conferencing options. There's also tablets. In this region, it's sponsored by JPay. We opted not to do the tablets. For one reason that we opted not to do the tablets is we didn't really see how it fed in with our pedagogical mission to maintain kind of this collaborative learning environment. We found that the tablets are very much a use unto yourself. And it's very hard to get kind of group learning on a tablet. So we first started with teleconferencing. And this meant we either used Department of Corrections speakerphones, or we bought speakerphones, and we sent them into the facilities. And the facilities would do whatever wiring was necessary. They would mount them on the walls, and they usually built some sort of security cage around them. And what this entailed is, if I'm the professor, I would call in on a number, and I would speak to the students who were in the classroom as if we were meeting, but it was much more, they were speaking the speakerphone, which was not ideal because of things such as echo and background noise, but it did help kind of maintain this kind of academic community feeling in the very least. But also we were able to, have at a certain point, great discussions. The next thing that we were able to introduce was WebEx video conferencing. And this, I know this picture makes it look way more high tech. I'm sure this is not what it looks like, but this looks good, right? And Video conferencing, we could only use sparingly because it wasn't, a lot of times what the Department of Corrections was doing was letting us basically borrow web conferencing materials that they use for parole boards. So it was a sharing process. Then we moved into actually trying to get a unit or two ourselves. And we kept doing the paper remote. So it was all, as you'll see, technology was additive, not the center. We maintained what we were doing and just kind of stacked back up. And we did that, again, so that we could move from our center, but also that when we started to get the chance to come back in, we could peel away the technology and just have in-person classes. So we did find that technology helped extend what we could do with the paper remote. We also found interestingly that it was more effective for math work and student advising. Just something about math we found out was much more visual than we had realized, especially for the notation. But we also, it kind of raised our increased need to be aware of surveillance and privacy issues of faculties and students. Not only just the classical security issues that the Department of Correction goes through, but also FERPA. Protecting student privacy became extremely important. Now, we've been doing that since March 2020, and right now we're in our fall semester and in the spring semester. Oh my God, time I cannot remember. All right, so we're in spring again, so it's been a year. It really has been a year. And we're using all three of these forms, but we're finding that really, of course, it's not ideal, but we have kept the college running and we have kept the college community going. But that's just our take on it. So we wanted to get some student feedback. So we created surveys asking questions about the student experience. What was it like for you when we put in the speaker phones? How are the tutors going? These kinds of things. And I'll share just a little bit of the kind of qualitative answers. One of the questions we asked is, what's the hardest part of all this? And one student said, the hardest part is not being able to have one-on-ones with professors like we used to. Another student said, not being able to get that in-depth, face-to-face, in-person experience. It matters. And then another student said, imagine a classroom where the teacher never turns around from the chalkboard. That's what technology was like for them. Another student also talked about what we're calling the Bard style. The traditional class structure is missing. I miss the Socratic dialectic that has shaped my learning process. There's only so much self-dialogue I can do before people start to wonder about my sanity. I've realized that even when we return to our normal and I'm released from prison, I want small class structure over the lecture hall settings. And as I mentioned about the math classes, someone said, I'm a math major. You have no idea how hard it is to teach yourself calculus or to rely on the book. I need in-class quizzes so that I can test my knowledge of the material. Math was never meant to be taught remotely. And then finally, students closed out with, what are they looking forward to? One said, I'm realizing how important the actual presence of the professor is to both itself. The room is much more alive with the professor. Another student said, in prison, higher learning requires more than the study of academics. It needs the social element of human interaction and inclusion. Face-to-face human interaction, lectures, use of the chalkboard. That student was very succinct. The college classroom experience and debating with professors, as if I know it all, and realizing I don't. And then finally, having the professors back, duh. All right, so just to reiterate, the main thing here, it's a pedagogical problem, not a technological one when these things happen. Hopefully this will never happen again, but I think it's probably the key thing that we've learned from the COVID experience. Thank you.